In operations, it includes quality as well. So you do also have to think about the quality, the food safety part, but there's all this other stuff. There's financial aspects. There is people management. There is on-time delivery. There is warehousing. There's logistics. There's all those other things that I may not have gotten the opportunity to learn if I just stayed in quality.
Tony Wong is the plant manager at 49th Parallel Coffee Roasters in Vancouver, Canada, and his food job is a lot more than just roasting coffee.
You have to be able to trust your team. You have to be able to put your team in the best position to succeed. And if you're able to do that, it'll make your life a lot easier. It'll make your team's life a lot easier, and you'll enjoy your work a lot more.
Tony makes the case that he has the best food job, because where else can you geek out about coffee roasting, dig into financials, and build a team that you are truly proud of all before lunch?
Many people don't go to school and say, I want to be running a plant, right?
Yeah.
But, stay open and be hungry, and you'll be surprised at where it can take you. My name is Tony Wong, and I'm the plant manager at 49th Parallel Coffee Roasters here in Vancouver. We're a specialty coffee roastery, started in 2004, and we've grown. We have 4 cafes here in the Lower Mainland and also 1 in Montreal. We roast all our coffee for our cafes here in our roastery, and my core responsibilities are the production side. We have 4 roasters, machines that we use to roast our coffee. They vary in size from 5 kg all the way up to 45 kg batches. And we supply to, like I mentioned, our cafes, to independent cafes. We also supply to specialty retail. So if you're shopping at Metro or Save On Foods or Loblaws or London Drugs here you'll find us on the shelf. My day-to-day responsibilities, like I mentioned, roastery, production. My role is also food safety, logistics, warehouse. We have an e-commerce department as well that's growing, and I make sure that the maintenance for all our machines are also working. So kind of a little bit of everything. And that's my core responsibilities for seems like there's a lot, but and it is, but it is super exciting, super fun.
It definitely is, and it goes like there's so many different ways we could take the next question in terms of you have the more, I guess you could say, data driven, running the plant, but then you also have the leadership aspect, getting the best out of your team and growing them, and then as you mentioned, the quality side. So I guess the next place I'd want to take it is just talking about maybe putting that all together in like a work week to see, kind of visualize what that looks like. Do you do all your roasting on Mondays? Does it change it up? I'd love to just know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we are a Monday to Friday operation. Currently, right now, we just run a morning shift. Our roasting team comes in quite early at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then our packing team comes a little bit later on, along with our warehousing team. My day-to-day is, like I mentioned, Monday to Friday. But of course, if we get super busy, we do have extra shifts. I work with the team very closely here on the production side. I also have a couple of direct reports that I work very closely with. So day-to-day wise is to make sure everything's on track, our KPIs are being met, and I'm generally following up with the team. As I mentioned, I also have a couple different scopes in terms of e-commerce, warehousing. So all those tasks kind of take up my day-to-day. So it's fairly, there is a bit of a structure, but for the most part, it is just making sure that everyone is aligned with the goals that we have for the week, and making sure that we're hitting our KPIs and producing quality coffee to our consumers.
Sorry, you used the term KPI, and I don't know if everyone might be familiar with that phrase or acronym. Could you just describe it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, KPIs are key performance indicators. So they are metrics that we use to measure. In layman's terms, like how are we doing? Are we doing fine? Are we doing good? Are we doing not so good? These are indicators that we use to help manage the business.
Okay, so it's just, I guess, as you mentioned, it's objectives. It's like want to try to reach, maybe like for a student, I want to get an A in the course. So like working towards doing the studying that gets them that grade.
Yeah, for example, you might say, my objective is to get a certain grade. In order to achieve that grade, I want to put in 3 hours of study a day or 2 hours of study or whatever that is. And that would be your, I guess, KPI. And then you can measure that on a day-to-day basis. Like, hey, I hit that, I didn't hit that. Or I want to achieve a new learning objective every day, or I want to learn something new every day. But yeah, that would be an example of a KPI.
Okay. And then I think another place that I'd want to take it is just talking about the roasting process for coffee beans. I don't know, like I myself am not too familiar with that, so I'd love to learn a little bit more about what that looks like.
Yeah, well, I'm learning every day. I've only been in the coffee industry for the past couple years. I've been in the food industry for many, many years, and it never seems to amaze me how much I can learn in the food industry because everything is always different. But the coffee plant produces cherries, and what you see as whole bean coffee is very different from what we see. It comes in, we call it green coffee, so it's actually a green color. Basically the raw coffee bean. And we buy from all over the world. We buy from Africa, we buy from Central and South America, and also in Asia. And it comes in sacks, 60 kilogram sacks. The coffee is in sacks. It's dry. It's dried. We open them up and we roast them basically. Depending on the different parts of the world. For example, in parts of Africa, water is quite scarce. So when the coffee cherries are picked, they're dried. They're dried on a bed. They're dried either on a patio or just on the ground. In some other areas of the world where it's a little bit more humid, they'll use something like washing stations where they'll float the coffee cherries in water and they'll kind of remove the outer layers and then you'll get the bean itself. So there's different ways that the coffee, once it's picked, can be processed. But at the end of the day, it comes in as green raw coffee, green coffee beans. And then we put it through a roaster. It's a drum roaster. It's gas fired. We have one that's over 100 years old.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, it's really cool. And that's how you get your roasted coffee. That's the roasted coffee that you see when you buy a bag of roasted coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really cool. To go. I never knew they came in like a cherry form. And it was just the bean, the inside that we took for coffee beans. That's something I learned when I was here. So
When it comes to the so you've gone through the roasting process. What are some of like the quality indicators? Because you mentioned like, do coffee beans have to have a certain moisture when they come out of the roast? Because I can imagine you start with one bean and it's very different than another one. So what are like some of the quality parameters you look for at the end?
yeah, so depending on how the coffee is processed, it'll have different moisture levels. It'll have different water activity. But when we roast, one of the key things we look at is color. So a colorimeter that we will take the roasted coffee, we'll grind it up, and then we'll put it through a colorimeter called an Agtron machine. And it'll give you a rating, it'll give you a number, and that will let us know how dark or light the coffee is. And depending on what we're trying to achieve, it'll give us a good indicator of how well the roast went. Yeah, because in coffee, you do have darker roast and you do have lighter roast. And the color changes depending on how dark the roast is. So we do use that as a key measure to determine how well the roast is. We also perform what we call cupping or sensory. So we'll take the coffee beans, we'll bring it to our lab, we'll grind it up, and we'll basically make coffee, and we'll do what we call a cupping session. So we'll lay all the coffees out on the table and we'll taste them. It's kind of like wine. So where you have like a sommelier, we have a couple people in our roastery what we call Q graders, and they're specially trained. They have a specially trained palate on coffee, and they will taste it, they will score it, they will grade it. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis. So we do our production cupping, where we would take the coffee from the last production run, and we will taste it to see that the quality and the consistency is still the same. And then we'll also taste coffee that comes in, because we have to buy coffee as well. So we'll do that as well. So yeah, there's a couple of different things, but the most important thing straight out of the roast, is the color, because that'll tell you how well that roast performed.
So for the same type of bean, do you roast it like can you have the same bean start and then have a dark roast of it and then like a light roast of it? Or does like usually this bean is set to be a dark roast?
The best example I can give you is bread.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can toast bread many ways. You can toast it super dark, or you can just put a little bit of heat on it, and the flavors will change. Every coffee you can roast dark, and every coffee you can roast light, but the flavors will change. The flavors will be different. So when you roast coffee that's light, you can really taste the flavors, the tasting notes. Those really come out. So certain coffees, for example, are single origin coffees. If you have coffees from Africa, for example, just because of the way it's dried and the altitude and the environment really plays a factor as well, you'll get what they call bright coffees, or a little bit more floral fruity flavors, versus something like a coffee from like South America, like Colombia or Brazil, where it'll be a little bit more nuttier chocolate notes. So it does change. Now, that being said, if you roast with a high heat and you roast it dark, it all comes out around the same. So
Okay.
darker coffees are generally more forgiving.
Okay.
So if you're roasting like a dark roast, it's a very forgiving roast, versus if you roasted a light roast. So generally, specialty coffee is roasted on the lighter side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then I guess with out of curiosity, like is there a preference from your customers? They prefer more of a lighter roast or a darker roast?
When it comes to specialty coffee, it's usually a lighter roast, because you get a lot of the different flavor notes.
Mm-hmm.
You can taste more of the flavor notes. But like anything, coffee is a personal preference. I generally like my coffee a little bit darker, but some people really like lighter coffees. And it also depends what you're trying to do. Like, if you put a lot of sugar and milk in it, you'll really hide a lot of the flavors. So for lighter roast, I drink all my coffee black, but you can put a bit of cream in there. But if you put sugar, you're just hiding all the flavors. So, but it does come down to personal preference. There's a lot of people that love darker coffee, like a really dark French roast or a really dark roast. So it's really up to personal preference, but most of our consumers in the specialty area generally prefer a lighter roast.
Okay. Well, I guess that makes sense. Like you said, like the lighter roasts, you tend to be able to taste like the fruity or like, I guess a wider array of flavors, but then it does come down to preference. So thinking about just like planning what I guess roasts get made, I guess I'm just wondering, like trying to get in your mind in terms of like tools and that, because you mentioned you have to get the KPIs and you have to achieve it. Is there any standard tools that you use or like systems that you depend on in order to actually reach those KPIs?
Well, we do have tools that we use to help us roast more effectively. Now, I should say that, we do have KPIs, but one of the most important KPIs that we have is quality. Uh, Being a specialty roastery, quality is very important to us. We know one of our missions is providing exceptional quality to our consumers, exceptional coffee to our consumers. So, we pride ourselves on the quality aspect of our coffee. With that being said, when we are roasting, we do use technology. So we do have programs that do help us look at what the temperature looks like inside the drum. That tells us how the roast is going. In the past, I would say, maybe back in the 1950s, 60s, drum roasters, you may not have that technology, so it's by visual, it's by smell, it's by sight. But nowadays we do have technology where it'll tell us, what's the temperature inside, what does it look like, how much gas we're putting in, what's the airflow inside. So that has really helped with that part of the roasting. But like I mentioned, quality is very important to us. We perform a lot of cuppings to make sure that the quality of the coffee that we're bringing in to roast is of high quality, and also the coffee that we have roasted is also of a high quality. So from that perspective, that those are kind of the main tools we use. From a planning perspective, we generally try to plan light to dark. So we'll roast all our lighter coffees first, and then we'll roast our dark roast at the end. Just because with a darker roast, you want more, we call energy, more heat. And because it is a steel drum that's rotating, it's an actual drum, right? So if you
It's a
have a lot
literal, it's
of,
an actual
if you're
drum
doing a
that's
dark,
rotating.
really dark roast first, and you're trying to do a light roast after, it's very hard to control because there's a lot of heat still in the drum, and you can over roast the coffee versus going the other way where you go lighter roast, then you move towards a dark roast, because as I mentioned, a darker roast is a little bit more forgiving.
That would make sense. But I love that, like, your KPI, that you, in a way, like, you start with the quality. Like, that is your indicator of what you're going to do well, which makes sense. Like, I mean, you want the highest quality product for your customer, and if you don't
Exactly.
do that, well, they're
That's,
not going to be coming
in the
back, and
food
you also want
industry,
to be proud
that's
of what you're making.
where I have seen time and time again. Yes, efficiency is important because we're all in the business to make money and make a profit. But at the end of the day, the two big things in, I would say, almost every place that I've worked in is always related to quality, whether it's and then safety. So whether it's health and safety or food safety and quality. So those are the two things that I see in every company that I have worked in, that those two things stand out as the most important thing over profits, over anything else. And being able to have that food safety knowledge has proven to be really beneficial for myself.
Well, I think that's actually the perfect segue to start talking about your background, as I know that you didn't start out of school and go straight into production. You do have this food safety background, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about it. So, Tony, why don't you tell me about, like how did you get here from when you graduated to now?
Yeah, it's a very, I mean, it's very interesting. People ask
Yeah.
me that all the time. I started out in at UBC in the food science program, and I've worked in the food industry my whole life. I did start out in quality and R&D, and there was a company that I worked for where the production manager had, I had worked for that company for a couple years, and then the production manager said, "Hey, are you interested in moving into production or operations?" And I knew nothing about it. I'm like, "Sure, why not?" He's like, "You know what? Give it a go. Give it a go. I'm going to teach you some stuff. And if you like it, awesome. If you don't like it, you can always
Hmm.
go back." I'm like, "Okay, fine, I'll give it a try." And you know, I I really enjoyed that part because I was able to, when I worked in quality, a lot of times I would find deviation or I would report on the result, and then I'd have to go to production and be like, "Hey, this has to be," like, for example, sanitation. I'll be like, "Okay, you gotta re-clean this again because it's not clean." Sometimes, I always wondered, well, what if I was in charge of that department, then I don't have to do all this extra step. I already understand why we need to do this. So that's why I was very interested and open to do it. And it had helped me quite a bit. I was able to, do a lot of things quicker because I already knew the reason behind it. And one of the other things that really helped me was the production manager at the time had exposed me to a concept called lean manufacturing, which I had no idea what it was before. And that also really helped me in my operations career. For those of you who don't know lean manufacturing, it's a system or a way of thinking that originated in Japan out of, I guess, World War II. Toyota is the company that's most famous for implementing lean manufacturing. If you get a chance, you can read a book, The Toyota Way. It talks about lean manufacturing and how that came about. But it's a different way of looking at production. It looks at waste, different types of waste. And that had really helped me in my career as well. That opened, quite a few number of doors for me afterwards. And, I'd recommend everyone to look into that. You can do a quick Google search of what's lean manufacturing. There's also something called Six Sigma. You can look at that as well, although I didn't really get into Six Sigma, but that is also really helpful for those of you who are interested in learning more about, lean manufacturing or Six Sigma.
Okay. Well, so what aspect of the production that made you keep staying? Because I know that, maybe you tried it for a little bit and then you liked it, but then you've continued to stay there. Like what aspects do you like about it?
Yeah, it's always different. It's always different. Yeah, there's challenges every day. Not to say that quality is not interesting, because it is.
Oh yeah, for sure
Yeah,
it is.
it's also very, very interesting, but in operations, it includes quality as well. So you do also have to think about the quality, the food safety part, but there's all this other stuff that I got to learn as well. There's the financial aspects. There is people management. There is on-time delivery. There's warehousing. There's logistics. There's all those other things that I may not have gotten the opportunity to learn if I just stayed in quality. But yeah, so when I was in operations, I got to learn all these things along with quality as well, because every food company that I have been in participates in food safety audits. So
Mhm.
that's always going to be a part of the business. Like I mentioned, every company that I've worked for, safety, health and safety are like the 1-2. I haven't worked for a company that has taken shortcuts around those two things, because everyone knows how important it is. And
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
one of those core things that, if you have that knowledge, it really puts you a step up. So if you are in operations or production, but you have a food safety background, it really puts you one step up from someone who doesn't. Because, like I mentioned, in every company, it is very important, if not the most important thing to the business when it comes to food.
So I guess as well, like that experience goes to show, like you kind of have that way of already anticipating what the quality department's going to be looking for. Like you're doing that line shift maybe, or, oh, we're going to be doing the sanitation. And you having that experience, you can look at it and be like, I already know that, like, of course you already know that the test is going to come, but then you can take it a little bit further to know, okay, what would a quality professional look like when they come over here? So it kind of helps you put yourself in their shoes because you've been in their shoes.
Exactly. It really helped me a lot in making decisions. Now, I do have worked in companies where I have worked with a quality team, and I have worked with a QA manager, an R&D manager, and having that background really helps have that conversation, because there's already a familiarity. There's already like a baseline knowledge, a baseline understanding of what things should be. So it makes the conversation go a lot quicker, and it makes it a lot easier to have that conversation where it's like, you understand food safety, you understand what is supposed to happen already. So
Mm-hmm.
now, that being said, I mean, sometimes decisions are not always black and white. There's different levels of gray, but it does really help those conversations when I have them with other QA managers or anybody else from the food safety team.
I guess I wanted to ask about like how do you actually not get overwhelmed or manage it? Because like you're saying, you're talking about shipping and then you're thinking about what the quality team's looking for, and then you have to, manage the roasters and
Yeah.
like I can imagine there's just so many things you have to keep track of. Like, do you just carry a notebook around and then like do a checklist to yourself? Like how do you actually keep up with so many different things at
I
once?
used to I used to use a notebook quite a bit, and I would fill up very quickly.
Yeah, I could imagine.
But nowadays, I use my laptop. I always put notes to myself. I always, I've moved away from the book. I still have it for some occasions where I need the book, but for the most part, I jot everything down. I write everything down, whether it's on my computer or on my book. And it's good to stay organized that way. Everybody has their way. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. But what I normally do is I would normally prioritize my task. One of the things that I've learned is there's always the task list will never end. There will always be something to do. But the important part is to prioritize what needs to be done now and what can wait, or sometimes it might be something that you don't even need to action and it will get taken care of with time. And the challenge is to be able to navigate through that, because if you try and tackle everything, you will get overwhelmed. I also I always look for a good team. Having a good team is very important because, like I mentioned, you can't do everything. There's just not enough time, not enough hours in a day to do everything. And if you try and do everything, you will do nothing, basically. And I had to learn that. It took some failures to do that, but that's one of the things that I took up with that. And if you have a good team, if you prioritize correctly, what really needs to be looked after and what can wait or what can be delegated to someone else. Those are important things to do. So that's what I typically did when I had my notebook or my computer. Have different tabs of what needs to be done, what can wait, and I don't have the answers to everything. That's one of the things that I've also learned, that it's okay to not have the answer. It's okay to not know what the answer is, and either go find out or ask someone who knows the answer. So yeah, those are the type of strategies I use to keep me grounded and keep me focused on kind of what's at hand.
Okay. So so you're actually able to bring, I guess I'm thinking in the past, but you can bring like tablets and that onto the work floor, or maybe that's ultra specific of a question.
Hmm. I mean, it depends on, when I first started on in the industry, it was like nothing. It was all paper. So I like paper pen. But nowadays, there is a lot more acceptance on using technology. So things like tablets, even phones. You know, we just recently digitized quite a few of our forms. So it's just scanning QR codes. So if you're doing monthly checks or things like that, instead of carrying a bunch of papers on clipboard, right? Now it's scan a QR code, answer on the phone. If you need to take a picture, it's there instantly and upload right away. So yeah, like technology has evolved. It's gotten to the point where it is a really good tool to use. I really encourage it. There's obviously a lot of different platforms that you can use, a lot of different apps and tools. But yeah, when I first started, it was pen and paper and clipboards. Now that, sometimes pen and paper are still good, but we have moved into a more digital area where it's like you're using apps, you're using QR codes and things like that. And then when we go through food safety audits, auditors have started to kind of understand that part as well. So it's like, don't always you have to bring a full binder of papers. As long as everything is secured and as long as you can show that it is secured, generally it's fine.
One thing that I also wanted to touch upon, because you mentioned it, was teamwork. And like a big part of the food industry is working as a team. Like, no matter what size of a company you work for, small or large, you're not going to be, unless you're like cooking in your kitchen for a food factory, I guess you could say. You could, maybe even then you're not alone. But I guess working on teamwork skills, because I feel, I don't know how to say, like, how do you build up being able to work in a team? Because I feel like sometimes when you're in school, you can just do your individual projects and then you don't get that opportunity to work in teams. Like, I guess my question is, if you were giving advice on how someone could practice getting teamwork skills, how would you suggest that they do that?
Well, the projects never end.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I always thought they ended with school, but they don't.
Oh no, that's not, no, cover my ears.
You're always going to have projects. You're always going to have, and you're always going to be working in teams. And one of the important things to understand is, in a school project, you may be working on one, like, you'll all have the same knowledge. For example, you're on the same class. You're all
Right.
taking the same, you might be in the same program. You're all learning the same things together, right? When you're in the workplace, or when some of the projects that I've come across, you're that may not be the case, right? You may have someone who has a financial degree. You may have someone who has a food science degree, and you may have someone who is, just someone who has worked on the line for like 20 years and has a lot of hands-on experience, but they have a very narrow scope. And the challenge of that is trying to understand what everyone's strengths are, and to leverage that to make sure that we're putting everybody in a position to succeed. It does take practice, and it does take a time to learn that. But I would say that would be one of the things that I would highlight when it comes to the difference between doing like a school project compared to a project in the workplace. Because, like, as you mentioned, if you're in the QA team, you are working with, like, you may be working on a project with a logistics manager that has like 15 years of experience in logistics but zero in food, because they came from textiles or something like that. So that's one of the challenges that I faced, and the way that I was able to kind of get around that is, I find that communication is really the key. Like, you can never over communicate. Even though if you feel like you're over communicating,
Huh.
you're not over
Okay.
communicating. Yeah. It's always good to give everybody as much information as possible, especially if you're working in a group. Now, I think nowadays there have been a lot more tools to help with that, like project management tools, that will help get everyone on the same page, have everyone kind of understand, where things are at. For example, like using Asana. I don't know if people have used Asana, but Asana is really good for that. And that those type of tools really help when you're working in a project, to help kind of get everybody on the same page. But I would say that would be one of the key differences when we're talking about working on a project in school versus working on a project in like in a workplace.
Okay. And I guess that would be, thinking about the students that are in school, when they do the group project, maybe it is worth it for them to try using like a project management tool, even for like a simple class project, instead of just going back and forth with the email. Or like, usually it's honestly like WhatsApp or Google Docs or something like that. Like, it might be worth it to try just to see how does it feel. So you get that like practice using those tools that are actually used in industry.
Yeah, and every company will have their own system. Every company will have different tools that they'll use. Yeah, like using WhatsApp or Teams or Slack or any sort of communication tools. And nowadays have been easier than ever.
Hmm.
Starting out, it was not like that.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah, it
wasn't.
is. It is definitely. It does help speed up communication, but at the same time, using things like Google has has a very good ecosystem to encourage that collaborative work environment. Slack does too, Microsoft. So they all have their tools. It's just a question of kind of refining those, working together as a team to do that. And it's also good to understand kind of what each person's role is in the project, right? You're going to have a person, you may work in a project where there's a project manager that would drive the project. And the key part, and, you may not be that project manager. You may be just one piece of that project. And on the flip side, you might run into a situation where you are the project manager and you have to
Right.
reflect 5 different people. So it's good to understand kind of where your role is in the project, because it's different. It depends, what you're what the project is, what the scope, and what your role is in the project.
And then I guess kind of speaking to the future, because you did use that term, is just talking about your role and looking about how your role is evolving. Do you see it changing much in the next few years? And if so, what skills are you currently working on to improve yourself? Because we're always evolving within our own roles.
Yeah. I like what I'm doing right now. And I'm learning more every day. Every day I feel like I'm learning. You can never stop learning. Stay curious. And for me, one of the things that I've seen a lot of kind of the production side, but one of the things that is also important is financial analysis. Yeah, like, because that is also important as you work in the industry. So that's one of the areas where I've always been kind of a operations kind of guy, looking at financial analysis, financial reports. While I've done it, it's not something that I've done consistently in my past. So that's kind of one of the areas that is going to be an area for me to focus on now. But, I do have a good team. I have a very good team with me here, and it's something I really look forward
Wow.
to
And then
learning more about.
Wow. And then I guess, having some financial individuals in your team, that does give you the opportunity to talk and ask them questions and learn.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So that's one of the cool things, right? Because everybody is specialized kind of in their own fields. And that's maybe something that you don't really see when you're in school. Because like I mentioned, if you're in the same program together, for example, I was just using my example of food science. If you're in food science, everybody's a food science major. You
Yep.
may not be able to talk to someone that's a finance major or a logistics major, or even when it comes to people and culture or HR. That's something that, that's a big part. That's a big part of that I didn't even get into. Learning to interview, learning to hire, navigating around that part is important too. So in the workplace, so that's that comes with time. But the good thing is, in a company, you'll usually have those subject matter experts that you can go to, or what we call SMEs. And if I would encourage the viewers listening, if you know some subject matter
Yeah.
experts,
Yeah.
pick their brain, talk to them, right? Get to understand. If you're in food science, you know everything there is about food science, but you may not know anything about people and culture. You may not know anything about uh, finance or something like that, right? So it's always good to kind of pick their brains on the SMEs, and talk to them. And at the same time, they'll probably ask you a lot of food questions.
Yes, that is true. That is true. And I guess, getting more specific, like let's just say a student is on their co-op position, or like they're working in a role and they want to start asking questions to other people. Like, what's the best way to approach somebody? Because I don't think you want to just do it in the middle
No.
of the shift unless it's like please start talking about it. So like how do you think someone should approach like a student to learn about someone else's role within a company? Like how do you actually go about asking those questions?
Yeah, I mean, you always start small, and you always start. One of the things for me is always to stay open when having
Okay.
conversations, right? Just have an open mind. Things always change. So somebody may have a different opinion. Some people may, not necessarily agree, but it's always good to have conversations. When you're approaching someone, for me, obviously you're not gonna meet someone on the first day and be like, hey, tell me about everything you know about this, right?
Yeah,
It's about
usually not.
relationships. It's about relationships. It's about networking. It's about talking to different people in different industries. If you ever get networking opportunities, highly encourage everyone to attend those, because networking is not always just about your your area of expertise. It might be something that might spur conversations for something else.
Right.
So I do. The food industry is very small, even though some might think it's huge.
It's
It's not.
smaller than people realize. Like the
It's
amount of circles that you realize that this person knows this person, it's like,
yeah,
how? How do you
yeah,
know them?
yeah, and that's the beauty of it, right? You make connections, you form connections, and that's kind of how I would go about it. I talk to a lot of people in different industries. I meet them on different networking events at work. If there is a work related question that you're genuinely curious about, yeah, don't be afraid to ask, right? Because if you show curiosity, if you show interest and it makes sense, don't be afraid to ask. Ask the person that you feel may know the most about it, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to share their knowledge with you.
That's really good pieces of advice, and it's start small, work your way up. Don't go full on asking everything about someone. It might scare the person off, but as well, it might overwhelm you because like, how are you going to keep track of everything? So
Exactly.
start small.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I guess the last question that I wanted to ask you, Tony, is just like looking to your like your younger self. Like, what piece of advice would you want to give yourself, or to you know what? Sorry, let me take it back. So looking back, like, is there any advice that you would give to your younger self?
That I know it's easier said than done, but always have good habits. So things like punctuality is important, integrity is important. Always be hungry to learn. I find that is very important. And if I could tell myself, my younger self, if I could go back, those are the things I would tell myself to do. Focus on what's important. Learn to delegate if you can. And the most difficult part about moving from, let's say, starting out as a QA tech to working into management to working as a senior director or president, whatever it is to transition from performing day-to-day tasks to working with people, to having a team. And I find that is, some people are really good at that and some people struggle. But at a certain point that will have to happen, because you're never going to be working by yourself. As you're always going to end up working as a team, or you'll have people that you'll need to lead. So to go from, when you first start out, you might be just working on individual tasks, but as you move up, as you grow in whatever you're doing, you're eventually going to have to lead a team, and learning those skills on how to lead a team is very important. And one of the things is, you can't do everything. Like, you have to be able to trust your team. You have to be able to put your team in the best position to succeed. And if you're able to do that, it'll make your life a lot easier. It'll make your team's life a lot easier, and you'll enjoy your work a lot more. So, so if I could tell myself again, that's what I would say. Have good habits, always be on time, be hungry to take on more, stay curious. And one of the things you'll find is you'll always have, like, you'll start off doing individual tasks, and as you grow, you will learn to take on a team and manage a team and have people working with you. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay.